when the meeting started, it was said that there's nothing new. We've all got a bit of form. In 1981, and this is prehistoric, I appreciate that, when Reagan visited for the first time, Green and Common women demonstrated in Parliament Square. And I was there, actually I was Chair of Finance at the time, the GLC, I was just on the way to a meeting, but as they were being nicked, I took their names and to secure them legal representation. And then I got arrested, and they went and told Livingston that I'd been arrested, and every Chair of Finance on the GLC before me for about 15 years had been arrested for corruption. So he immediately thought I'd had their hands in it. Anyway, I went to court, and there was a special patrol group then, 3 officers, an inspector and a sergeant and a PC, gave 5 different versions of the events. And thank God in those days, this is archaeology I know, but there was an American tourist with a cine camera who came forward with a film to demonstrate that I hadn't leapt over a barrier, jumped on 3 policemen and beaten them to pulp. Paul Boateng represented me, whatever happened to him. Anyway, I don't know, is there anyone here from Transition Heathrow? Because we just need to share some of the experiences. Last week in my constituency, Transition Heathrow, a group of environmentalists, have been absolutely brilliant in our campaign against the 3rd runway. And they've taken over and occupied a derelict site for the last 2 years. They've transformed it into a wonderful community garden. They're an essential part of our community. And we were meeting last Thursday morning to talk about issues coming up, and also they were going to start work on a pond for my office garden, which was great. I get a phone call, I get a text saying can't make it, another text saying can't make it because 40 police have arrived. And what happened was the police turned up, they used bolt cutters to cut through the gate, they handcuffed people, and then they detained them in the prefab that's on the site itself. They searched, according to the warrant, I got down to the cops had gone by that time, they searched for materials that could be used for criminal damage. They were looking for things like paint. Well, they were shown, there's a watercolour section for the kids. So they showed them then, and then they just left. I went back, I raised it in Parliament, and by that time we were getting report after report of the sweep that was going on. Chris Knight is a mate of mine going back years, 67-year-old ex-professor of anthropology. I thought I was looking forward to it. What Chris did for his street theatre, he'd constructed a guillotine and was going to execute papier-mâché members of the royal family, which I thought was a useful form of street entertainment, which might have balanced out the coverage of the royal wedding. And it was a pre-crime, and I think what we need to do is just on practical actions, and I agree with this, just step back a bit and think of your government at the moment. If you're in government at the moment, and you're introducing a whole rash of policies which people are angry about, they're cutting people's jobs, their services, 2.5 million unemployed, 1 million young people unemployed, and they're driving through more and more to people, make people homeless and all the rest of it, you're going to calculate that there's going to be a resistance, aren't you? Yes. It's inevitable. This isn't conspiracy theory, it is rational for them to sit down and think, what level of resistance is there going to be to these policies, because there will be resistance. And what happened last November, when the student demonstration turned up with UCU, 50,000 rather than 20,000 expected, and they kicked the shit out of Millbank Towers as well, what they then thought, this is a taster of things to come. And if you're in government, and I've been in situations, you just tell the relevant officers, and in this case the police or the security services, just do what is necessary to quell this resistance and kill it off as best you can and keep us in government. And that's what's happening. This isn't conspiracy theory, it's perfectly rational government from their point of view. So the cops basically have been given a free hand. And that's what's happening. And it's a free hand to intimidate as much as it is to prosecute. And that's what last Thursday my constituency was all about. It was a fishing expedition, of course. I don't think they expected to find anyone or anything, but it was more about intimidating people to not come forward and demonstrate in any way. Following on from that, I think they've made clear to the police that they act within the law, but it's clear now they'll turn a blind eye if they go any further. And that's what's happening consistently now. And I think they're breaking new ground now in terms of the actions that they're taking, because there's a boldness that they now have that they think they've got authority from the top to do that. That's the first thing. I just make this plea. In terms of practical actions, the first step, I think, is making sure people do have access to legal representation as rapidly as possible. And all the work that we've done over the years trying to secure that is actually not coming to fruition in the way I thought it would do. It might be because of the cuts in legal aid and cuts in legal practices that have gone on and the cuts in the voluntary sector, but we need to do a job of work now of making sure people know about their legal rights, who are the best firms to contact, who are the specialist firms to contact. We've seen one tonight about legal representation. The second issue then is when people do get prosecuted, I agree with the solidarity actions are turning up in court and all the rest, I think are important, but if they do go down, I think it's critically important that people aren't left isolated and that people do sort out visits both to their family and to people who are inside as well at different times. And they're given practical aid and assistance as well in terms of supporting them while they're inside. The other issue then I also think is it's important that we disseminate as widely as possible what's happening. Because although there's been some good media coverage and the YouTube and the use of the new media has been absolutely brilliant, it's still a relatively small number of people still who are aware of just how far it's going, And when there's breakthroughs, and UK Uncut have just been fantastic, when there are breakthroughs like the UK Uncut description and filming of what happened when they used the mace on the demonstrators in Oxford Street, when that gets out to a wider audience of civilians, if you like, people who have never been involved in demonstrations, there's a real reaction about what the hell's going on. This isn't what we expected, and I think we're building support then against, in terms of campaigning against the actions of the police then. The other issue, let me just say this also. Don't expect government is going to sit there and take it as well. What they're looking at now, as you know, is they're worried about occupations, so they're bringing forward, Kenneth Clarke now is bringing forward the review of squatting legislation, squatting laws. And it's important that we get the message out during that consultation period about what this means. This isn't just about a few people squatting in rich people's houses, although that's justifiable with the homeless crisis that we've got. This is about preventing occupations as well. The other issue is just finally, as you know, what we're doing now is working for coordinated industrial action. On June the 30th, we'll have a number of trade unions coming out for the first time on mass coordinated action, for the first time in maybe a generation. RMT are trying to build up, as you know, working constructively with Bob, to ensure that other action is taken as best they can to coordinate that and build it. What the government is now thinking, as there was a debate in Parliament last week where Tory backbencher floating the idea, is looking at further anti-trade union legislation as well. So what we'll see, I think, in this coming period is the government relying upon the police and the security services to intimidate and prevent as much protest as they possibly can, but then also looking at a new raft of legislation possibly on civil liberties, on squatting, and also on industrial action. It's important that everyone sees that as the same struggle. You know, the industrial action is not isolated from the civil liberties protests or from the UK Uncut Tax Justice campaign. It's all part of a piece. And the most important thing, therefore, I'll just say this, is to provide solidarity wherever you possibly can. So if it is a demonstration, we try and get as many trade unions onto the demonstration. If there is a picket line, we join the picket lines as well. Finally, I'll do my best with Jeremy Corbyn and others, who are just absolutely brilliant, man, to raise these issues in Parliament. Don't expect an awful lot of support within Parliament itself, but you might want to think as Parliament as a focus for some protest activity in the future. When we did the climate camp and actually the runway campaign, I got blamed for people going on the route. I didn't actually do it, but anyway, I think it's important that we let MPs know, both in their constituencies and in Parliament as well, that people aren't going to lie down and take this attack on their civil liberties. Solidarity. Yeah.